I'm Ellis Martin. In my perpetual quest for uncovering truth, both personal and societal, I'm speaking with Dr. Lise Janelle, visiting from Toronto, Canada. Dr. Lise Janelle is a transformational coach in the integration of mind, body, and spirit. For the past 2 decades, she has helped thousands around the world make quantum leaps in their growth, with powerful seminars and leading-edge techniques. Her clients range from Olympic athletes, moms, celebrities, executives, entrepreneurs, artists, and youths. She's the founder of Center for Heart Living, which is dedicated to empowering people by connecting them to their core values. Her website is centerforheartliving.com. Welcome to my show, Lise.
Thank you, Ellis.
Let's talk about extreme freedom.
Yes.
I noticed you have a seminar on your website, centerforheartliving.com, and the seminar is taking place of June 2012. I'm a big proponent of freedom. What is extreme freedom?
I called my weekend workshop Extreme Freedom extreme because I've had people come and do my seminars who were able to go bungee jumping and they were able to go skydiving, but they were not able to face themselves. So that's why I called it extreme. I wanted people to know that when they come to my seminar, they're really going to have to face themselves. If they're ready to make a quantum jump in their personal growth and development and know more about who they are, it's the seminar to come to. Just like you face yourself when you jump out of an airplane because you see yourself when you have fear and how you react to that, the same thing can happen. So I wanted it to be a bit of an inspiration for people also. It's like, just like you decide, okay, I'm going to go skydiving, and you look forward to that. You pump yourself up to be able to do it. I wanted people to know that this is what's going to happen. And freedom for me is, I like to use the symbol of the yin and the yang. I use the yin and the yang. It's also my logo. That's why I use that. Because it represents the duality that's present in every moment. And for me, the extreme freedom is represented by the yin, which is the female principle, and the yang, which is the male principle. And the yin is the ability to listen to yourself, to your dreams. And the yang is the ability to act so you can make your dreams come true. And I've had many people come to see me to help them make the transition into admitting what they really want in life. For example, let's say you've been in a career for 20 years, you got security, you got 6 weeks off, paid every year holiday. You know, it's easy, it's comfortable. And then your little heart tells you it's time to change. You're dying in here, you're not growing anymore. Listening to that can be very scary. If the little voice inside of you is telling you, you know, you need to change from being employed to being self-employed, it's time for you now to start your business. People sometimes don't want to hear that. Or it could be about, you know, you're in this relationship and you're done and it's time to go, but you have the kids or you have the financial security again, you're going to lose half your assets. All these things that often we don't want to hear. So that's the yin part. Sometimes we don't want to admit to ourselves what it is we want. Because also sometimes we don't feel worthy of having those things we want. So that's the yin part. The yang part is about the ability to make our dreams come true. If we've had times in the past where we had quote failures and we are afraid of recreating that in the future, often people won't go after their dream because what if I try and I fail? So for me, extreme freedom is the ability to admit to ourselves what it is we would really love to have in our life and design an action plan and get going on it, because then you feel alive.
Wouldn't you agree that most people have some sort of fear of failure level built into their lives? And isn't that something that's integrated in a subconscious level that has to be worked on, deprogrammed more or less, and reprogrammed?
I work a lot with the subconscious mind. That's part of what makes me different out there. I am convinced that we don't manifest what we want in life, we manifest what we believe. And so often we're not aware of our belief. And you're right, people are afraid of failure, but also people are afraid of success. Those two things prevent us from moving forward.
So there are many people who sabotage their own success, maybe not all of it, but enough of it to where they don't realize their truest desire.
In my career, I've worked with thousands of people. With working with the subconscious mind, I've discovered some patterns. For example, our relationship with mother often will shape a lot of our romantic relationship. Whether male or female, it's going to be a relationship with mother. Our relationship with father will determine how far we think we can go into a career in finances. And our relationship with siblings will often shape how big we feel we're allowed to be in the world. For example, I'll give you an example about me. One day I was doing the work and checking that I wanted to be successful. And consciously, I know I wanted to be successful, but subconsciously we brought me back to an incident when I was 5 years old, and I remembered it was very vivid when I finally got the incident and back from my subconscious to my conscious mind. And I had been coloring in my coloring book. I was 5 years old. My little sister is 3.5. And I was doing quite well. I was all proud. And when I showed it to my mother said, "Well done, Lise, you color between the lines. It's beautiful." My little sister, she couldn't color between the lines, so she ran away crying. So I'm standing there feeling like, wow, this is not fun. When I'm successful, it upsets people, makes them feel bad, and worse, I end up alone. And many people have associated that in the back of their mind. If they're going to be successful, often they're going to be alone. And people will do a lot of things not to be alone.
How do you turn around 20, 30, 40 years of bad habits into a healthy life?
Well, first, you said something earlier, and it's about deprogramming. First, we need to find out what is the trigger, find the moment where we create a belief in our mind, just like me when as a child, that success equals me being alone. So we need to go find the incident so we can dissolve it from our physiology. Because a lot of the memories, what happens is they get stored at the cellular level. And if you bring yourself back and become present with the memory, you can dissolve it from the physiology. And then the next step is, one of the reasons people are afraid is because we imagine that we can have more pain than pleasure. And if you go back and look at the big picture, you're going to realize that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And again, I like to use the yin and the yang, but this time I use the dark as the challenge and the light as the benefit. And within each event that occurs to us, to the same extent we have a challenge, to the same extent we have an opportunity. And if we can go back and look at the big picture, we realize how these incidents were necessary for our growth. So when we can change our memory, because as a child, you don't understand, and my sister likes to tell me the story, "Yes, Lise, it's true that I ran away crying, but the following day I made a bigger drawing and Mom put it on the fridge." And my sister, afterwards, she's the artistic one in the family. She does paintings and she does craft and she's very artistic. And me, I kept into the science. So we both ended up, through that incident, if I had been able as a child to see the bigger picture, I would have realized that actually that incident drove my sister and made her push forward and become more artistic. And me, because I didn't want to compete with her, I went more into the science, which also served me. So when we're able to take a distance and look at it from above, when we're not in the paradox, Einstein says you cannot solve a problem at the level it was created at. So you have to be able to transcend the paradox. So when you're able to look from above down and see that for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, then you don't have fear, because you realize that whatever is going to happen in the future is going to be perfect.
Yin and yang, cause and effect. You mentioned children. Does that mean that as we grow as children, we allow our experiences to form us and dictate who we're going to be based on our own inner passion, and we shouldn't necessarily try to overmanage our children?
Well, what I recommend is that you follow your heart, because whatever path you go on, there's going to be an equal set of pros and cons. The yin and the yang will always be present. So for every choice you make, there's going to be a price to pay. So how are you supposed to decide? As human beings, we can live our life through our mind, through our emotions, or through our heart. But the place where we feel the most fulfillment is when we're in the heart. Because you can make a decision logically. I'm sure you can decide, for example, to live in LA or live in New York. You could make lists and find pros and cons to living in LA, and you could find pros and cons to live in New York. But if right now inside of you, your heart tells you need to be in LA, that's where you're going to be. The more we can make every choice based on our love versus our head, the more fulfilling our life becomes.
How do you even know what your choices should be if you're living in the moment at a molecular level, more or less?
If you're in the moment, you hear the voice, the inner voice is pretty strong, and you know whether or not you're fooling yourself.
Can you be fooling yourself with an idea for some reason that, we're talking about LA and New York, you can hear some sirens in the background right now, and you hear that in both cities, and maybe the idea of living in New York, the idea of living in Hawaii, or the idea of living in Los Angeles, if you're from Toronto, let's say, the idea seems attractive. At what point do you realize that this fantasy may not be the reality that your heart aligns with?
That's a very good question, and I believe that's actually the path to spiritual evolution, is to discover the difference between infatuation and love. When we are infatuated with something, we see more pros than cons. We see it's better than something else. When we love something, we're able to look at both sides and be willing to pay the price. Often when we're infatuated, we think, I'm going to go there, or I'm going to do these things, and it's going to be pleasure, 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 pleasure. And that's because we're not looking at the price to pay. When we love something, someone, we're willing to pay the price. We're willing to look at both sides and embrace both sides. Many artists fall in that category, for example. That's why often artists are discouraged by parents. The parents come from their mind often. They don't want their child to starve. But an adult that consciously decides, I want to be an artist, they have to have a calling inside. They know that it's not so easy to make it out there, and you need courage and dedication, and you're going to have to face many hurdles before you can actually start making a living out being an artist. So I find often musicians are like that, artists, actors. If you are truly in your heart of heart, if you are an artist, an actor, there's a voice inside of you, and you need to be willing to listen to that voice versus listening to your fears. And that is freedom.
So listening to your fears is bondage.
Exactly.
Fascinating. You know, my dad, and he was my best friend, he wanted me to be a lawyer so I could earn a decent living and never have to worry about not earning a decent living. And while being a fan of the arts, he didn't recommend that as a career choice. And I had no idea I was an artist. Even though I was a musician, I had no idea I was an artist until later in life, and then I completely embraced it in many different categories. But I was not successful as an artist without having a business background. It just didn't work in this culture. How much passion do you need as an artist with talent to laser focus on that and not worry about the day-to-day eating, a roof over your head?
Well, when I suggest my clients, when they want to follow their heart, is fear is the biggest impediment from them realizing their dreams. So what you do is you put in place a plan where you find something to do that allows you to pay the bills, the minimal amount of time you can do to survive, so you can focus your energy onto doing the thing that your heart calls you to do. And most of the time it takes at least 3 years. And most people are not willing to wait 3 years to get their dreams to come true. And that's when they start to give up. Most people within 6 months, if they haven't seen the results they wanted, they give up. But it takes on average 3 years. I'm convinced if you are following your heart, not your infatuation, if you're following your heart and being true to yourself and challenging yourself because the voice inside tells you need to be doing something, you're going to succeed.
Let's talk about the difference between passion, real passion, and infatuation. It seems that's a very, very gray line.
Well, I believe there's two paths. Some of us, we know exactly what's in our heart and what we need to be doing. And some of us, sometimes we are meant to mistaken our infatuation for our, what we call here passion, which I call more our inspiration from our heart. Because on your way to experiencing your infatuation, you develop talents, insights, experiences, knowledge, wisdom that's necessary for you as the step that will lead you to being able to follow your heart. And there are no mistakes. Wherever path we end up going on, if we're able to go back and look at, because it's easy to look at something and say, oh, I was just infatuated and now I feel like a loser because I don't ever want to make that mistake again. But then what you're doing is you're preventing yourself from growing. So if you're able to go back in the past and see that from that experience that you thought was the truth, but realize later on it was just an infatuation, first you can learn the difference between an intense desire and something that's in your heart. This in itself is a big part of the puzzle of what it means to be a human being and following our heart. The most common story of that, the biggest example is when we fall in love, which is really most of the time falling in infatuation. Because we see all pleasure, no pain, it's intense, it's like a drug, it's like woohoo, it's like wow, it makes us feel so alive, it must be love. But it is not love.
Total infatuation?
Total infatuation is a big high, a big addiction. And through the infatuation, often then we end up swinging to the other side, which is resentment. But if we work at it, then we can bring it back to the middle, which is love. And the difference between love and infatuation is gratitude. And gratitude is quiet. When we're in infatuation, it's a high. It feels like, woohoo, it's like it's really high up into the head. Usually we can feel it in the body. If you check your body, you're going to know the difference between love and infatuation. Because love is quiet, and you will feel it right above the heart. And when you're in infatuation, it's usually from about 3-4 inches below the throat, and you feel it, it's intense, it sparkles, it makes you feel like really intensely alive, and it's so strong. That's usually an infatuation. So learning to feel in our body where we're feeling the sensation can help us, guide us, and tell us whether or not we're dealing with infatuation or the heart with gratitude.
Let's say you recognize somebody who you're infatuated with, but you think you're falling in love with at first sight. Mm-hmm. That's truly infatuation, in your opinion. And to really love somebody, you have to, get to know them really well and love who they are, period? Good and bad?
Yes, if you truly love someone, it's unconditional for their good and bad, for their light and dark side. That is true love. Any parent will tell you that if they love their child, they've had to pay a big price, usually, to have a child. And because they pay the price, that's why if you speak to parents, most parents will tell you that it's the best thing they've ever had was their child. Why? Because there's not many things in life people are willing to give themselves heart and soul for except their child. And if we were able to do this with everything in our life, giving ourselves 100%, we would experience the same thing. The people who have the most fulfilling relationships are the ones who give 100% of their heart without any protection. But I find that part of the challenge we have as human beings is often we get hurt in our first relationships. Then we shut down the heart a little bit. And when we shut down the heart, instead of coming from love, we come from our ego. So there's a part, if the heart was fully open, and then we shut down a little bit each time that we get hurt, we end up having, maybe our heart open to our mate 60-70%, and then we keep a band that's like 30% shut down. And within that's where the dynamics, the fear of being hurt, because almost every quarrel that we have in a relationship is because we are afraid that we're not going to be loved the way we would love to be loved. We are afraid of being hurt. This is why we quarrel in relationships. We are deep down, underneath all the quarrels is, oh my goodness, I'll never be able to be loved the way I want to be loved. Underneath that is, it's because I'm not worthy of love.
People have ideas of what they might want in a relationship and how they want to be loved. I want to be taken to dinner. I want my meals made. I want this person to like what I like. These are a bunch of demands. How can we make demands on other people and have it be unconditional love?
Well, what I find is really interesting is when we first fall in quote-quote love, which is infatuation, we don't know who we are. First of all, we have no idea who we are, really. We're not really connected to our heart. Second, we don't know anything about love. We've never experienced it. And the main experience that we've had of intimate relationship was with mother. So whether we're a man or a woman, our first relationship intimate, most of us, was with mother. And she was in charge of nursing us, keeping us safe, making us happy, playing with us, making sure we're entertained, changing our diapers. She was willing to do everything. She had to give up of her life to take care of us. That's why the most exhausted people you see on this planet are full-time mothers. They give up of who they are for the child. And that's the first model we have in our mind of what a romantic relationship should be, that intimacy we're looking for. And that to me is the immature type of relationship, where actually if you were imagining two circles, you take those two circles and you put them on top of each other. We're looking for somebody who's willing to give themselves up to satisfy us, and that never works. That always leads to two people totally separated. The stronger the need to have somebody to be our becking order, to make us happy, to be there when we want them, to go away when we want them to go away, and we're not willing to learn to find our own happiness within ourselves, the more we do this, the more it goes into resentment. The balanced relationship is where you find a mate that has similar values as yours when it comes to relationship, and allows you to be your own individual being, and you allow them to be their own individual being. When you have two people busy following their heart and fulfilling their life, they don't need the other being to make them happy. They can share companionship, they can have a best friend that they can make wonderful love with, but they're not looking for that person to fill in the void that they have inside themselves, because they are not following their heart. So for me, the easiest way of having a fulfilling romantic relationship is to make sure you have two beings who are dedicated to following their heart, that have similar values when it comes to what it means to be in a relationship. And then you can explore yourself and love another being that way.
So making a relationship demand list is really not practical.
Well, as we mentioned before, some things, some values need to be in sync. But yeah, expecting our mate to be able to make us happy is, nobody can make that happen to anybody else. Nobody can. I could spend a whole day with you and try to make you happy and like be around you and do everything you want. And if you're not connected inside your heart, you would still be miserable. Because nobody on the outside. It's really, the journey is about us having the freedom to listen to our heart and act on our heart. That's what brings us gratitude. To be able to share that with a mate who's on a similar path, that's bonus. That's having the best mate that you can have. Somebody who's on the same journey as you, if you look at it spiritually, who wants to grow and learn and shares that with you, that's possible. But looking for somebody who's going to make you happy, well, there are things that you're going to find, but it's you're going to know in your heart. That's how you know whether or not to go with a person. The best place for that to happen is online dating. Anybody who's been online dating knows, because you can read a profile and there's like 50 points that are there, and it sounds like they match you. They have different tests that will match you, and people will tell you. You get in front of the person, and there's like no connection. Your heart goes, Nothing is happening in there. And I'm convinced that the reason we get attracted to someone is because we have the knowing at that moment that this person can teach us how to love ourselves and can teach us about love. And that's the person we're going to pick. Because I've worked with many couples when I do the work, the subconscious work that I do, and you would have goosebumps seeing how the person you get attracted to has similar wounds, similar back experiences, that we get attracted to that person, trying to heal our stuff through them, and it never works. At first it feels like it could happen, because in the beginning, in the infatuation phase, we stop doing everything we're doing to be with that person. But then as life starts to come in, and then the infatuation goes away, then we're left with the same emptiness inside. Then we start fighting with the person because we feel, that person can't take my pain away anymore. That's what happens with the infatuation, the resentment. But if you're wise, what you're going to do is you're going to use whatever feels like it's not working and find out, how can I use this? How can I use this as a clue as to where inside of me I've had this challenge created by the illusion at that moment that there was more pain than pleasure, that I was not worthy of love.
Many people that are listening to this interview are in relationships. Everyone's in relationships of some sort of another.
Yes.
Whether it's romantic or with people they work with, whether it's a relationship with their job, their family, their children. Instead of necessarily changing that particular relationship, which may seem obvious on the surface, if only I was with someone else or in a different situation, should you perhaps work on yourself?
That's the first thing I recommend when I'm with someone, is that you can use the relationship with anyone, as you wisely just mentioned, as a big mirror to the selves. That's actually a process that I teach, that I created. It's called the extreme freedom process. Again, extreme because you have to be willing to face yourself. And I can give it to you right now. If you have a piece of paper right now, it's very easy. It's 4 questions. The first question is, what is the problem of the person that's annoying you right now? Like, don't be enlightened, cut through the chase, just write down what their problem is. The second question is, what's the solution to their problem? If they only listened to you and did it this way, their problem, your problem, the world would be a better place if they just did what you told them to do. The third question is, where do you have the same challenge as they do? And how can you use the solutions for them for yourself? And I guarantee you, and once you start using this formula, different things can happen. Either the person stops doing the things that's annoying you. That's often, it's kind of magical actually. You can observe it. The person will stop doing the behavior that's annoying you. Or you'll be so busy trying to do what needs to be done that you were telling them they need to do, that it doesn't push your buttons anymore.
So you're never having a discussion with this individual. You've just made the list, pointing out what you'd love to change about them and applying that to yourself.
And watch the magic. Don't take my word for it. Actually use that.
What you see in others is what you see in yourself.
And it's so beautiful. I'll give you an example. My now late husband, when we got married, he had the dream of starting his business. And 9 months after we got married, he had not started his business yet. And I was starting to tell him what to do. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do my own work on myself. And I wrote down, so what's his problem? Well, he's not following his heart. What does he need to do? Just do it. Where am I not following my heart? Well, I've been telling myself I want to write a book and I still have not written it. So how can I do this? I just start writing my book. So I started to write my book, and within a week, my husband started his business. It's been in my life, but also in my clients' life, my students, the people that I have shown this technique to, and it's uncanny how it works. It's truly fascinating. I used to call this technique actually FedEx from the universe, but I thought maybe FedEx would not like that I use their name. Because for me, it's like the people pushing your button. It's like a message from the universe telling you, pay attention to this. And if you actually pay attention, it will lead you exactly into the next step. The thing that's blocking you right now is being shown to you. And as you work through that block in yourself, you get yourself to the next level that you really, truly desire in your life. You don't have to be corny. You actually become truly grateful for that person that a moment earlier was annoying you.
Is it because that individual is watching you do your heart's desire that they're motivated to do the same? Is it because they perceive you as someone who's taking action? Or is it some other explanation we don't know?
Well, we're entering the realm of many hypotheses. And I've seen enough amazing things happen through this that I think it's more like an energy connection that we have. And if I'm sitting beside someone, if you want to read some great material about how we influence each other, there's an institute in California called the Heart Math Institute. And they've measured all kinds of things. For example, if you put the electrodes on a head of one person sitting beside another person, if the person is in their heart versus not in their heart, how it then impacts the person sitting right beside them. So when we're in our heart and when we're focusing on ourselves, we have a different way of connecting with the people that we are with. And they sense that. If you dislike someone, I guarantee you, even if you're speaking nicely to them and you are saying all the right words, the person knows that you're disliking them. It's not possible. If you're at all connected to your intuition, you know very quickly if somebody really means that they're being nice to you or connected with you, or if they're being phony. And we know that. So if you're with someone and they're annoying you, and through doing this work, you actually become grateful, you change the relationship. Right away, it changes the relationship.
Can you find somebody who may be annoying to you not annoying at some point? Or do you just honor that intuition to begin with and just move away?
Well, if you go back into the method I was just showing you, if you use the message that they're giving you as to where you need to go to facilitate your own evolution, and you start working on that, they stop annoying you. or they disappear. I don't know how it happens, but often the person, if it's a neighbor that's doing something really annoying, or your child that does something really annoying, they either stop doing it or they don't hang around you. The timing changes and you don't have it around you anymore.
What is the Center for Heart Living?
The Center for Heart Living, I created this in Toronto because I want to bring in different practitioners who will help people live from their heart. Right now we have a psychiatrist who is highly aware of the challenge that they face in the mental health care and how the way out is through the heart. And I have other people who are interested in coming and doing workshops, and that's what I want to create. But I also wanted to make it a hub so people know where to go if they are interested in living from their heart. As I mentioned before, as human beings, we can live our life through our mind, through our emotions, or through our heart. The only way to feel successful is through being connected in the heart. People often, a mind is revered. If you're smart, if you are brilliant, if you have a brilliant mind, you'll be revered for that. But people who live in their mind, when they get challenged, when something really challenging happens to them, often they crumble. The people, when they're emotional, I find working with people who are emotional, it's easy for me to give them some wise intellectual knowledge to help them enter the heart. They take that more easily. So I work with people who are emotional, people who are more cerebral, have a bigger challenge entering the heart. But once you become aware that the true happiness that everybody is looking for really comes from connected in the heart, then you have something to focus on that makes you gain time, as opposed to going around on different tangents trying to find happiness through the mind or through the emotions.
You can actually gain time?
Gain time, that's a good question. You can go on less tangents, so you can be more directly connecting with your heart.
So you're not wasting as much time.
Exactly.
You mentioned at the beginning of this interview listening to the inner voice, listening to the voice in your head that tells you to do one thing and maybe not do something else. To my knowledge, and I'm just speaking for myself because I can't speak for anyone else, there's many little voices in there saying all sorts of things, some of them cool, some of them ridiculous, and some of them special. Is it the ability to recognize that special voice that comes from our heart that will bring us continued success?
Yes. What you're saying, I think you already know the answer, because the way you put the question shows me you've been thinking about that. When the voice speaks to you from your heart, there's no doubt. It can be scary because you know what's being asked of you, but you just know that you know that you know that this is what needs to be done. When we're in our head, when we're infatuated, those can take us on tangent, and we know it's kind of like in our nervous system, it's kind of like an anxiety that comes with those. When we have the heart telling us something, it's steady, it's solid, it's not nervous. There's a knowing that this is the path to take.
There's no hesitation. Mm-mm. You just go. Mm-hmm. What if you have a life of infatuation and that's what you keep manifesting? Mm-hmm. How do you know that this newest possible infatuation, how do you know if it's an infatuation or something truly coming from the heart that's good for you, right for you, that you're on your right path?
When it's in your heart, it's quiet. When it's an infatuation, it feels like elation. It's a high. So you'll know the difference. If it's quiet, that's your heart. If it's an infatuation, it's hee-haw, woo, yes, let's go for that. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with following your infatuation. If you step in and you keep your mind open and you look and observe, you can learn a lot from following an infatuation. But do not. I think it's so important to know the difference between infatuation and love. And once you become aware of the concept, then you can learn quickly and you can disentangle yourself faster from it.
Disentangle. That's a good word. Okay, I'm interested in what you have to say. I live in Topeka, Kansas, or I live in San Diego, California. I live in Toronto. How does Dr. Lise Janelle help me?
There's different opportunities. You can come to some of the seminars that I schedule. You can organize a group and have me fly over. And I also do one-on-one coaching. I have people around the world. I do Skype coaching, phone coaching. I can do it that way. Read the books, buy the materials, the products. It's easy. You can download them from our website.
CenterforHeartLiving.com.
Mm-hmm.
How do you apply this beautiful logic to the workplace, which is, we spend 8 to 10 hours a day in the workplace, depending on where we are and what we do, and that is our lives, and maybe that's our biggest challenge, is our everyday bread and butter. How do you take your I'm going to call it technology for lack of a different word, how do you take that to the workplace?
The workplace is such a good place because, yes, we spend so much time, and if you look at the dynamics at work, it's very much like home. Your co-workers are your siblings, and your boss is mom and dad. And once you understand the dynamics that you had at home, the insecurities that you had at home, you'll be able to watch yourself and how you've reproduced the same thing. Your insecurities will show up at work the same way as you had them at home. And if you follow the extreme freedom process that I just showed you, like what's the problem of your coworker, what's the solution to their challenge, where do I have the same challenge and how do I use the solution? If you start doing this, you're going to change the relationships you have at work. You're going to increase the likelihood of promotion because you're going to come from a place of confidence, and people pick up on that. When we are insecure, that's when things don't go well. When we are secure, we're connected inside, people realize our wisdom and our confidence, and those people get the promotions.
So should you be hired individually, or should you come in as a group with regard to certain companies, corporations?
Well, that can be a very good question, depending on company and where they're working at. If they can take a group of persons that's already proven themselves as a tight unit that's already worked out the bugs. But you can hire people and just bring them together. You might need some coaching on how to make it work. But for example, at our office, just now we got a new employee that started working for us. And there were some dynamics that were started, but we used what was happening. And it's beautiful to see how everybody's grown from it. And the unit now is tighter because we face what we could see were the challenges. Everybody humbled themselves. We took what needed to be done, and from that became more self-confident. Each one of us was able to find something they did not know about themselves before. And because we created trust to facing our light and dark side together, now the unit is even more solid.
The lack of economic solvency in the United States, is that just a big lack of trust, societally speaking? Is that a trust issue?
You're asking me a big question. There can be so many ways we can look at it. It can be a lack of trust in our own worthiness and our ability to make changes.
All we can do, I suppose, at the end of the day is not concern ourselves with the bigger issues and use that as an escapism from our own reality. And we have to focus on ourselves, our own income, our own family life, our own relationships, and maybe not pay attention to the news so much, correct?
The news spreads fear. And fear is the biggest impediment between us and our dreams. So it can be foolish. You don't just jump in front of a truck hoping that you won't get run over. So you need to have some wisdom. But if you listen to your heart and have the courage to take the action step necessary to make things happen, you do not have to fear. People are able to turn around great challenges into opportunities. Actually, it's interesting. Napoleon Hill had been hired by Dale Carnegie to go around the United States and interview the most successful people at the time. And one thing he found they all had in common was the ability to find the benefits within a crisis. So if you're the person who's able to see the light from the darkness, that's the person that can see how within every challenge there's a seed of opportunity, you're the one who's going to rise to the top. Most people, when a challenge happens, they start to crumble because they go into fear. The wise person asks themselves, how can I use this crisis? How can I use this challenge to grow? How can I make myself, my family, my team, my business stronger?
How do you turn around a psyche of fatalism that might be instilled in an individual who has had nothing but bad luck and surrounding them, whether it's themselves or their families or what have you? How do you fight that logic? These people aren't willing.
Well, you can't help anybody who doesn't want something. So for sure, if somebody is not interested in turning their life around, it's not going to happen. You can have the best coaches in the world and it's not going to happen.
What if that's in your family?
Well, as long as the person has no desire, then you can't do anything. I often say to my client, you're like the horse, and I'm in the carriage, and I have the reins, and I can help you go left or right. But if the horse is not pulling, we're not going anywhere. So it's important to have a strong intention, a strong desire. I come from a very humble background. I grew up, we had no money at all. But somehow inside of me, I've always had a desire to live a great life, a large life, a life where I will make a difference. And I could have used all kinds of excuses not to do what I needed to do in my life. But my inspiration, I was blessed. I could be connected to my heart and listen to what was there. And my inspiration was greater than my fears, and I was able to follow it. I know it because I didn't grow up with a silver spoon in my mouth. I grew in a place that was very challenging, very humble. We were poor, actually. And if you have a strong intention and you match it with actions, anything is possible. My ideal client is somebody with an intense desire for something in their life and courage. With those two ingredients and wisdom, you can achieve anything you want.
Before this interview, we had lunch, and you talked about a butterfly analogy.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I love this analogy. It's a bit corny, but I love it. It really expresses what it's like to be a human being. And the analogy is the scientist that was observing a butterfly coming out of a cocoon. It's a huge struggle, so the scientist feels sorry for the butterfly and decides next time, instead of just watching, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the cocoon open. So that's what he did. But because he took away the struggle, because now the butterfly didn't have anything to push against with its wings were too weak and it could never fly, and it died like this. And if we can go back in our life and look at how all the events that we thought were challenges and unfair were actually there to help us build strength of character, personality traits, talents, qualities, interest. When we start looking at the big picture, when we do that, what we do, we automatically increase our self-worth. And the more self-worth you have, the more connection to your heart you have, the more power you have, the more courage you can do things, and then you start turning your life around. It is so important to be able to look back, no matter what the challenges were, because I've worked with all kinds of horrific challenges, and when the spirit is there, people can find how any challenge can be turned into a benefit, how actually they were not punishments that were sent to us, but they were our blessings. They were there to help us become who we really are, which is a beautiful, powerful human being connected in the heart that can use all of the experiences to go and fly the world and make a difference in people's lives.
And that comes with some sort of struggle? I don't like to use the word, but I can't think of another one at the moment. Some sort of pushing against, some sort of healthy conflict?
Even if it's not healthy, I believe there are no coincidences in where we were born, to whom we were born, and the challenges that we faced as we were growing up. Either within our family or at school, whatever challenge that we face, it was perfectly designed just for us, perfectly designed to get us on track, discovering, questioning, having interest, the people that we surrounded ourselves with. And if we're wise, we can look at how to use these events in our life to inspire ourselves so we can inspire others.
What if you hadn't had those humble roots? If you hadn't been poor, would you still have had this big loving heart and been able to do what you're doing, in your opinion?
Yes, because even being born in wealth is challenging. I have a very good friend of mine who was born in extreme wealth, and that's just a different type of challenge. Like, am I worthy of this? How can I live up to the expectation? What can I do? Like, what comes with the responsibilities of having that? Like, it's just a different challenge. That, I think my message that I would like to leave is that nobody here on planet Earth comes with more pleasure than pain, or more pain than pleasure. If we look at the big picture, is that each one of us has been given a set of challenges and support, and if we're wise, we can turn it into gratitude. There's no situation out there that was easier than the other. If you were supported a lot, often you were weakened, just like the butterfly story. And if you were challenged a lot, and you were able to use the wisdom that came from that, you're going to be super strong. So nobody has it easier. And we need, as human beings, the source of human suffering is the search for pleasure without challenges. And we're part of a generation right now that's striving to get support and comfort and ease. And with that, it's going to come great challenges because it does not exist. You can never have more pleasure than challenges. They will always be balanced, just like the yin and the yang.
And the yin and the yang doesn't represent extremes. It's not either one or the other. It's that fine line. If you notice in the yin and yang symbol, there's always a fine line that walks between the two. It's the middle road. Is there a middle road?
The middle road that comes when you accept that both the support and the challenge that you've had were not there because you were unworthy of love, but because you are worthy and because that was your destiny to experience this and have gratitude for it. And once you're in the middle there, you can do anything.
How does one contact you?
You can contact the office at 416-405-9478, 416-405-9478, or you can reach me at Dr. Lise at getavibrantlife.com.
The website is centerforheartliving.com. We've been visiting with Dr. Lise Janelle. Lise, thanks so much for joining us today on the program.
Thank you very much, Ellis. I much enjoy sharing with you and discussing with you.
Listen to this segment again here or on the website ellismartinreports.com.